Welcome, Ruddle Maniacs, to episode 46 of Ruddle Me This. I am your host, as always, Captain Hack Sparrow, and I'm going to be joined today by my first mate, which is Hector Bombosa. You'll meet him very soon. So today is the first episode of 2024, and it's the very self-indulgent Q&Tay episode. The idea for this came about inspired by a YouTuber called Joey Bizinger, who is also known as the Anime Man. He was talking about the pillars of his year, and he said that he likes to start all of his years off by doing a Q&A episode, and I thought that sounds like a great idea, so I'll have that. And so here we are. I've collated a few questions that have been submitted by the delightful Ruddle Maniac listeners out there and people that follow my Facebook page. Frankly, I think it's a lot of friends and family, but that's the name of the game, isn't it? So I was initially going to do this solo, but then I thought, why not get somebody to kind of feed my ego and ask me the questions and make me feel like I'm an important person who people want to know things about. And given that I've recently gotten rid of the old Yeti that I used to record the podcast on, and it has been donated to a good cause, Henry Hickman, some of you will remember from a few episodes ago, we did the, what would you call it, the breakdown of the entire history of Survivor, which was it's an episode that does very well in terms of the downloads. So let's welcome Henry to the show. Is the Hector Bombosa that I mentioned before. So hello, Henry, and welcome back to the show.
Wait, I thought we were talking about Survivor again. What's going on?
We'll do the Q&A thing first, and then we'll do the questions after that, I promise.
All right, good.
The viewers can't see, but I'm winking into the camera right now.
Thanks for having me back, though.
Yeah, no, delightful too. And I thought, since you've got a good quality mic and probably not up to much like myself, we could ring in the new year by doing a podcast. Did you have a good New Year's?
Yeah, pretty good. Although it's quite depressing that you said the Anime Man, and I go, yeah, I know Joey. I know about him. Well, it speaks a lot to our...
Well, that's why you're the right man for this job, Henry. I was like, who is going to understand my plight? And there's only one man out there that I could think of, and I'm looking right at him. So thank you for joining us. Should we get into the questions, I guess?
Yeah, let's get straight into some questions.
So what have we got?
Well, we'll start with a good one. All of them are good ones, to be honest, but we'll start with one that's good by default. If I gave you 3 return flights to anywhere in the world, where would you go?
This is such a good question. It was one of those ones that when you put out a question and answer call, you're expecting a lot of chaff, a lot of silly questions, a lot of just like abuse being hurled your way. But the fact that somebody asked such a good question was really nice. So 3 return flights to anywhere in the world. I guess you'll be able to relate to this one, given that you've just gotten back from there. Is definitely, I would pick Tokyo as one of them.
Good answer.
You recently returned back. Is there anything you'd recommend I do while I'm in Tokyo?
Everything. I can't think of a single day that I was there where I didn't have the time of my life. Probably my favorite thing is my brother and I accidentally terrorized non-tourist Tokyo. We were trying to hit every Pokemon Center. We went out to one of the ones in, I think, Sunshine Bay or whatever, and we get there, and my brother and I look at each other and go, hang on, we're the only white people here.
You entered the part that they weren't expecting foreigners to enter, is what you mean?
Yeah. None of the FFOS machines had any English on them. None of the people there spoke any English. I'm just picking up my Snorlax plush and I'm going, Snorlax? And they're like, what?
Yeah. You're just pointing and saying "Sore kudasai," which is please, or no, kore kudasai, I guess you'd say. That was one of the first, along with "I'm sorry, I don't understand." Kore kudasai was like one of the first Japanese phrases I learned when I lived there, because it's a very universal phrase. So I would say definitely one of them would be Tokyo, because while I lived there, I lived in Fukuoka for 3 years, but I went up to Tokyo once and like didn't really speak Japanese at all. So, that kind of limits what you can do, I suppose. Although you seem like you did it right there.
No, I disagree. Sumimasen is the only thing you need to know how to say. If you say that, the Japanese people go from wanting you out of this store to be like, oh my god,
He's making an
he knows
effort,
how to
yeah.
apologize.
Yoroshiku onegaishimasu is another one that's like there's never a bad time to say it. It's always going to be welcome. And the funniest thing is it's so hard to explain to people what that means in English because there is no real. It's such a contextual word. It can mean something different in different situations. So, um, if you're a foreigner planning on going there, just pepper that into a sentence every now and then, and people will be delighted. So that'll be flight number one. Of course, got to go to the Tokyo Comedy Bar. You did a couple of sets there,
I just did the one set
just the
there, but
one.
it was great.
I know quite a few of the local battlers who are sort of holding it down over there. So yeah, I'd love to do a couple of spots there. I think that'd be a lot of fun. It looks like it's a really cool like setup and everything. So yeah, that's definitely one. As for the others, I suppose if you're a stand-up, you've got to say New York, because
Yeah,
the fact that you can hear these crazy stories of like you can do 7 spots in a night. That just sounds like so much fun. Although I have heard if you want to do that, you have to plan it. It has to have you just have to have this magical roadmap of planning, and you have to kind of like you can't be late to any of your spots, and you'd have to really know the public transport and stuff. So maybe 7 in a night is a little bit ambitious, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like it's like Mecca. You have to go. You have to make the pilgrimage there at some point, and then you return to your hometown, and
yeah.
your sins are cleansed, or whatever the pilgrimages were.
I've been to the States before. I've been to California and Texas, and neither of them were very much a 7 stand-up gigs in a night. So New York might be the next one I go to.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard, and I think uh like well, we don't need to get into the differences between East and West Coast comedy, because me always complaining about comedians doing podcasts and then talking about comedy nonstop. So yeah, New York would be one of them, and then for the third one, I'm at a bit of a loss. I'd have to pick somewhere totally random. Like I'd love to go to like you could say London because that's another comedy thing, but I think if I used all three of my trips for stand up, that'd be a little bit of a waste of the opportunity. So I think I'd have to just pick somewhere weird like Germany or Switzerland or somewhere in Europe that is kind of like that I don't really know anything about, if that makes sense. Like just go into it with an open mind, and I'd love to do one of those no planning holidays where you sort of just you have like a rough plan of where you want to go, but then like how you actually get in between the spots is sort of you figure that out on the go. I'm too much of a control freak
Yeah, I was
to
gonna say, I think you've described my worst nightmare.
yeah, well, that's what I mean is like on paper I like the idea of it, but in practice I think it would be one of the most stressful holidays of my life. So,
Yeah.
um,
Although I
but I
do
mean you've
find
got to
it funny that you're going. Oh, sorry.
no, 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 please go ahead.
Edit that out of post.
That's fine.
Um,
We
I
don't
do
edit
find
here.
it.
We don't edit here and Ruddle Me This.
Yeah, I do find it funny that you've said I need to go somewhere super out there and random,
And then
like
picked a developed
Germany.
first world country. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to say like I'll go to Azerbaijan or
Yeah, that's true. I did,
Kyrgyzstan or
I,
something.
I did pick a very sheltered white idea of an exotic place.
Yeah.
Um, okay, well, so I think that's that question answered. That is my pick. So be Tokyo, New York, and then I just sort of throw a dart at a map and see what part of Europe. Nice, safe Europe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
nothing too crazy. Yeah, let's move on to the next question.
I'm gonna have no input for this one because I'm not a music fan. If you could
Yeah,
put together a concert with any three bands slash artists, including those alive, dead, or disbanded, who would you pick?
again, it's a fantastic question that I remember seeing come through on the Google form, and I just find it flattering that they assume that I'm that cultured that I would have this. Like you say, I don't know music really, so I think my answer is probably ultimately going to be disappointing to the person that asked that question because I imagine they have this perfect show right down to the set list that all the bands played and you know bands that deceased or then it would be this kind of eclectic eclectic mix of songs. Um, but I guess my main answer to that one would be I would love to see the band Ghost live. Are you familiar with them at all, Henry?
No, I'm not
So
familiar with music that isn't made by Weird Al or Hatsune Miku.
that's that's fair. That's a was your Spotify Wrapped? Just both of
Yes.
those.
Yep.
My Spotify Wrapped genuinely had the Beastie Boys on it, just because I have listened to one of like I've listened to it so little that it was just the fire. It was a Paramore. I don't remember the other three, and then it was and it was Beastie Boys. But like that's genuinely just from me having listened to a couple of songs, throughout the year on Spotify. Um, but I would have to. This band Ghost is an interesting one to explain to people. They are a band that have lore, if that makes sense, like Lore.
Yep.
And I'll give you a TLDR of the band. Um, so in universe, there is a satanic church. They're called the Ministry, I think. They might have changed their name, but generally, I think they refer to themselves as the clergy or the ministry. And they decided that the best way to get through to the kids was through a rock band. So they made a rock band that sings like these power ballads and love songs and stuff, but they're all about Satan and demons and all that kind of thing. And they have all the members of the bands are people that they call them something like they're called faceless ghouls, I think, and they're just wearing black like suits and they have like the same mask on and they're kind of I think there's a whole controversy with the band where the guy behind the band is called Tobias Forge, and he's like from the Nordic countries somewhere. I think he might be from is he Swiss? I'm not quite sure. He might be Finnish. I'm going to piss off Ghost fans by not knowing this, but he's from that part of the world, and he came up with the concept for the band, and he hired the I think they were just like local musicians that he knew, and they were his faceless ghouls. And there was a bit of a power struggle where at one point the band members wanted more creative input, but I think Tobias was kind of like, like I just hired you to play the music that I wrote, and so they had a bit of a falling out with like a lot of the original ghouls, and it seems like the ones that have. He's probably got a lawyer onto it and has got the contract down properly now, so it's kind of what it is. And so Tobias plays a character called Papa Emeritus, which is essentially like a demonic pope. Um, and each album they change the frontman of the band. The first three were all brothers. It was like he wears like a rubber mask when he plays the character, and it's got like skull face paint on. And the oldest brother was the first one. That was when they were kind of like an indie band before they were like successful. Then when they released another album, they changed to the middle brother who was like slightly younger, and then they kind of popped off. They had this song called Square Hammer, which went like I guess viral or that hit the charts. And the Papa Emeritus 3, he was the one that was the front man at the time. That's kind of the default one in my head because it was when I started listening to the band. And then after that album, they killed the three brothers off. Like they did these internet vignettes of a faceless girl sneaking up behind. They were all playing poker, the three brothers, and then a faceless girl snuck up behind them and stuck a needle in their neck and killed them all. And then
Oh, cool.
the next one was a character called Cardinal Copia. I think all the characters are kind of references to things in the Catholic Church, and like they wear these elaborate pope robes and stuff like that. And they added another element to the character of like you can be the front man of the band, but you have to kind of earn your paint, and each papa has a distinctive face paint on, and that's kind of where I stopped following it super closely. That was within the last couple of albums, so I think as of the last album, Cardinal Copia has become, he's earned his paint and he has the paint and he's got like his robes and everything like that. And, as you can imagine, their shows are these big theatrical things with big stained glass windows behind them. And um, the Tobias, the guy behind it, said that he wanted the concerts to be like sort of like a religious experience for people with like lights and lasers and smoke and everything like that. And so that seems like a band that would be good to see live. Um, so I guess it would. Does the question state how many bands I have to have on this lineup?
Yeah, any
Oh,
three.
three bands. Okay, so
Yeah.
after
So
that, like
you've
five
answered a
minute
third of the question.
5 minute rambling, one band is Ghost. um, now I got to think of two other bands that would go with Ghost. And then sort of be like a good concert. And
You're
then
not going to
also I
go
have
for a
to.
Christian rock band now?
What's that?
You're not going to go for like a Christian rock band
Well,
just for
like
the comedy of it.
Striper or something.
Yeah, ju- just to be
They
next
would
to Ghost.
they would refuse to play that gig probably. Um, I don't know what the other two bands I would choose were. Three copies of Ghost. They just do their whole album. As weird as it
Yeah.
sounds, I'd love to see AC/DC live as well. So, as weird of a lineup that would be to have Ghost and AC/DC on the lineup, I think I'd quite enjoy that.
You get a third
Um,
one.
and then as for the third or the third band, um, that's a I don't know. I'm going to really disappoint the person who asked this question because I think evidently I come across as more cultured than I actually am. Um,
Yeah.
I wonder. I'm just going to really quickly look at my media player and like, what the hell do I even? You know, when someone asks you about music, you panic
Yeah.
and you're like, I've never listened to music in my life.
You're just going to Google what is a band.
What are popular bands for a 31-year-old man to enjoy?
Yep.
Um,
I think the Paramore. Um, that's it.
that's the whole band.
That's the band.
I wouldn't mind seeing the Offspring live. I think I've got quite a few Offspring band songs on my playlist. I have. Oh, do you know what I'd love to see? So this is again a very nerdy one, but the band called Flow, I think they are, who do a lot of the Naruto
Ooh.
openings.
Ah, yeah.
I think
But the
I would.
Nanimo guys.
What's that?
Did they do Nanimo?
Is that the
I
name of
don't
the band?
know. No, because Flow's the name of the band, but there's that one that goes Nanimo.
Yeah, they do. They
Nanimo.
did Go, which is that Fighting Dreamers song that everyone. I think
Ah,
that's the
yeah.
most popular one. They've done quite a few of them. That'll be cool to have on the lineup, I think. So, an eclectic mix of AC/DC, Flow, a Japanese band, and then Ghost as the headliner. So that is my Woodstock, my Rudstock 2024. Let's make it happen.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay,
Then
so
I'll listen to this and you'll be in.
exactly, yeah. This is the pitch to whatever music, and that's the thing is you have to imagine where in New Zealand is this concert going to play? It's going to be like in the, you know, what is our arena called now? Christchurch's arena
uh,
is
I was
changed.
thinking of Austin Club.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Little acoustic set from all three of them. I don't know. All right, let's move on to the next one. I spent way too long answering that question.
That's okay. I assume you'll spend just as long on this one.
Uh-huh.
Not submitted by me, but I'll be intently listening to this answer. Why don't you have a co-host for Ruddle Me This?
Definitely not submitted by Henry.
Not so, no. My question's later.
Oh, okay, great, great. Okay, so that's the game for the rest of the podcast is I have to figure out which question was yours. Um, okay, so why don't I have? So I mentioned being a control freak before, and that's basically the answer as to why I don't have a co-host because it's not like I don't play well with others. It's more like certain projects I need to have. I'm like Tobias Forge. I need complete creative control for certain projects. And this was a big thing as I did actually spend a lot of time when I was thinking about relaunching it, doing some like one-off podcast tests with some people. But it was one of those things where if the if the chemistry or whatever you call it was right, then the schedules weren't lining up, and then vice versa. So it just like I sort of um, couldn't win either way. And then I thought, I think I'd rather have the flexibility to be able to do it solo rather than needing to like find a time that works for two people in a
Yeah,
week. And I always thought, you know how there's that whole saying of like you can like don't over season your food because you can always add more. My thought there was like go do solo and you can always bring a co-host on as long as you establish that early in the making of the show, I guess. Um, the other thing that I like uh, is so we're gonna go back to music, and I know you're the wrong person to talk to about this, but the idea of a supergroup is appealing to me because I find the idea really interesting that you bring people that already are doing their own things in their own kind of lane, if you will, and they're doing well in their lane. You bring them together, and then whatever you create is like supercharged there. Like the Joe. So you must listen to Trash Taste as well if you know Joey Bizinger.
yeah, yeah.
So that was that was genuinely one of the things I thought about is like I looked at the three hosts of Trash Taste are what are their real names? Joe Bazinga is the anime man. There's Connor Coloquin, is that how you pronounce his last name?
I'm not sure, but I'm a big Connor
C
enjoyer.
Sea Dog VA is
Yeah,
his internet handle, and then Gantz. I definitely can't pronounce Gant's last name, but he is what is he like the Anime Zone or something?
something like that. I'm mainly there for Joey.
And so like the three of these guys were kind of I think they were probably like the top three anime YouTubers at the time, and they got like a proposition from their current manager, who was a woman called Maylene, I think. And it was the idea that they're all these successful guys doing their own thing, so let's bring them together and make like a super group podcast. And that was how the Trash Taste podcast
Yeah.
like existed. So I thought like, well, if I work on my own thing and then kind of encourage other people to work on their own thing, we can have these little super group, all these little super groups, while people can retain the creative control of their own projects. Like with uh, Matt Lilly and Georgia, they've got their own podcast, but I'm doing a few crossovers with them, and that's
Yeah.
kind of exactly how I like it. I think it's cool as everyone can do their own thing, but then when you team up, it's like the Avengers um, coming
I'll
together.
talk about getting you on a video on Hickman Survivor at some point. Shout out.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
We're crossing over, so that's we'll give Henry's content a plug there because Henry's been making me very proud by doing his own content. Look up at Henry Hickman Survivor on the YouTubes. He's putting out some quality content there, and
well,
I
get into
can.
quality.
He's putting out some content there, and me who doesn't know Survivor at all, I enjoyed it well enough. So
Oh, hell
let's
yeah.
go to the next question.
And here's one for all of the rejected co-hosts. How do I get started making a podcast?
That's a good question. I can give you a really quick few step programs. Buy either a Yeti Blue or I'm just trying to remember what the technical name of my new microphone is. It is a Samson Q2U, which apparently is a very cheap um it's a very cheap model of microphone, but it only costs about $100 New Zealand off Amazon to ship it here.
Right?
And I'm recording on it now, and the quality has been like very satisfactory for me. So that would be the mic I recommend. Use either Audacity or I guess GarageBand if you have GarageBand on a Mac, or use there's another program called Reaper, which the guys at Compass FM have been recommending to me, but that's probably a little bit I would say that's a bit advanced for someone who's just learning. So yeah, download Audacity. It's a free program. It'll let you record and edit, and it will let you clean up your audio. Look up some tutorials on how to clean up your audio and like uh, put some effects on it and that kind of thing. Go to YouTube and search royalty-free music and pick a jingle that you like. Um, Genuinely the way that I did the theme songs for Ruddle Me This is I did that, Googled royalty free music, skipped through the song until I found a bit that I thought I could fade in and fade out to kind of create the illusion that it was a short jingle. Or in the case of Ruddle Me This is music, I I think I did a little trick where I had the intro play and then I just kind of went to the end of the song because songs usually have like a really percussive beat to end them on. It's like some songs don't sound right if you just fade them out. So pretty much all I did with there was just found found that, cut and pasted it up to the middle, and then kind of matched it up so you couldn't tell when the cut was. And then I had like a 15-second kind of riff to open the show with. Um, then I recommend you get onto Buzzsprout. That's the podcast host that I use. It costs about $20 a month to host your stuff on there. Um, but it's like it, it does so much for you. Like it puts it onto all of the um, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, stuff like that. And then that's about all you need to do to make a podcast. And just don't like to anyone out there that's thinking about doing it, don't expect your first few to be good. Like you should be proud of them, but like don't get too hung up on trying to make them perfect because I listened back to the first few that I was putting out, and like the I remember thinking they were good at the time, but looking back now, there's definitely stuff to do with just cleaning up the audio and like how much more confidently I talk, where you can see there's been some growth there, and so that's basically the case. Is you're going to look back on the old stuff in a bit and be like, wow, that was pretty rough, but at least now
Yep.
I'm kind of doing it. And yeah, just don't worry about them being perfect. You're going to get like 15 listens in the beginning, so it's not worth stressing out over it. You just got to get them out there and get people listening to it, and you're going to have to plug it literally everywhere you can. Like I hand out flyers and business cards at the end of comedy shows. I slip little frames. I slipped, the PowerPoints we use for the quizzes, Henry.
Yep.
So I've got one
Yeah.
of my podcasts in there, and then whenever that comes up, I always go, "Oh, how did that get in there?" And then I tell tell the audience to follow my podcast if they
For an
want.
extra bonus point.
And so that's the thing, is you just have to really hawk the crap out of it, and eventually you'll gather up enough people that enjoy listening to it to have like a little listener base. That would be like my practical guide for getting started from nothing now. Um,
Nice.
yeah. So
What you
that's
say about the improvement, I
yeah,
have made one video and I posted like this is great, and then I listened to it later and I was like, wow, this is awful. And it's
yeah.
only been a week. And now I'm working on the second one and I listen back to it now. I'm like, it sounds better in terms of technical skill, but in terms of not sounding like I want to put a bullet through my skull as I narrate this, it still sounds awful.
That's the tough
Hopefully
thing.
by the 20th one I will sound good even.
Exactly. Like it took me 19 episodes until I thought the podcast really kind of found its feet. And like, uh, yeah, it just takes a long time. It's like stand up, it takes a long time to get good at it. And like you say, like the one thing that I'm always getting as feedback from the Compass FM people is like, you need to sound, you need to sound happier. Like, yeah, you need to sound like, smile when you talk into the microphone.
Oh, shit,
And
that's good advice.
yeah, genuinely, you can hear the smile in people's voice, which is pretty hard to do for like emotionally stunted Kiwi blokes
Yeah, I
to
was about to say
to
I'm trying to learn how to smile right now, and I'm looking at myself in the camera, being like, "Hey, you look like a registered sex offender. What are you doing?"
You look like Arnold in Terminator 3 when he tells the robot to
Yeah,
smile.
yep.
But that's it, man.
Another one I
Like,
haven't seen.
okay, I'm gradually learning not to make movie references to you then. Um, okay, so then where was I going with that point? We were talking about how to get
You did all
started.
the practical stuff, but what about the impractical ideas and
Yeah,
finding
that's a great
motivation, how to
question.
get started?
That's a great question. Okay, so in the terms of how to come up with a podcast, what I would recommend you doing, this is not something that I did. Um, so if you want to get discovered a lot easier, I recommend having a very descriptive title, like to the point where it's not even clever anymore. Like let's say Henry was starting a Survivor podcast. I
Let's
would
say,
honestly recommend you literally just call it like the Survivor podcast, or do you know what I mean? Like something like that. Like I've tremendously shot myself in the foot by choosing the name Ruddle Me This, because A, people are not Googling Taylor Ruddle at all. And then B, if they do Google Ruddle Me This, then Google goes, "Did you mean riddle me this?" And then it sends them. So I learn from my mistakes, fellow listeners, and choose a name that people are going to be searching for. Plus, uh, so that I've turned down the offer from so many comedians to do a podcast together because they couldn't give me the elevator pitch as to what they wanted the podcast to be. They'd say, "Oh, bro, we should start a podcast together," and I go, "Okay, well, what's the angle? Like, what's the why should someone listen to it over anything else?" And just kind of get some mumbling response of like, "Oh, yeah, it's just like two comedians talking about like the news and like what's going." And it's like that's so boring. Like, I don't
yeah,
care what two
yeah,
random comedians in a country that I'm not from. Uh, why do I care what their opinions are? Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So at least with Riddle Me This, I kind of have the gimmick of getting the guests to bring a media or whatever on it. Like that's my attempt at having a game. I refer to it as having a game in your podcast. Like there's one called "Are You Garbage?" and The way Are You Garbage works is the guests are usually comedians. They come on the show and the guests ask them questions about their childhood and upbringing to determine whether they grew up as garbage or classy individuals. And the genius thing about it is, like, it is going to sound weird, but I honestly think the best podcasts are almost like the setup for a good improv show. So, like, the thing with Are You Garbage is they know what they're there to do. They know, like, okay, we're going to ask the comedian these questions from their past. They're going to answer, and then it's about like where it goes. Like, it gives them space to riff and play. And so that's what I mean when I say find the game. Um, I've got so many friends that have a good game, but I don't want to say it in case someone nicks their idea. So I'll use Jim Jeffries' podcast is another good one. It's called I Don't Know About That. And he's set himself up beautifully with this, where all he has to do is turn up and be funny. Like, he's
Can't
got
relate.
producers and stuff, and like the way his show works is they bring an expert onto the show. Each show has a topic, and then Jim has to blag about how much he knows about this topic, and they'll ask him questions about the topic, and he has to confidently answer what he thinks the answers to them are, and then the expert corrects him at the end. So really, all he's done is set himself up to. All he has to do is show up to the studio whenever they record once a week or something, and then he basically just plays improv. Like, he just plays with his staff. Well, that sounds really dodgy, doesn't it? He plays with the staff.
Hmm.
They play a game. Oh God, stop! Quit while you're here, Taylor. So my recommendation would be find a selling point like that, like either of those two examples or something else. Like, I think I can say it at this point, but another one that I think I've found is called 10 Tiny Joys, where I'm going to get the guests to come on and bring their list of like 10 mundane things through their life that like they love. So there'll be little simple things like sitting with my cat in the living room, or opening a can of soda on a hot day, like the mundane stuff, not like when I pick up my son for the first time, like that kind of, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the important things in life.
yeah. We
And
don't want to hear about that.
yeah, exactly. So um that is one that I'm going to be trying out and seeing if that gets any traction. I think I can say it because I don't really think I'm not that worried about someone making that idea. Like, it might, yeah, they might do. Alrighty, what was the next question there, Henry?
But what's your biggest blooper from your recent tour?
Without question, that was me falling off the stage in Inch Bar. Um, it's there's audio of it a few episodes ago. There's an episode called Highlights from the comedy tour, something along those lines, where I have the literal audio of me putting my foot into what I didn't realize was a step in the stage, and then kind of stumbling forward, and my hand went into the corner of a mixing board and knocked off some of the plastic little slider thingies, which thankfully they just clipped back on. Um, but yeah, that was pretty humiliating. And I think had it been any other crowd, that would have just about tanked me. But they were just laughing kind of at it. And did that thing when a toddler falls down where you kind of just don't really address it and move on. You kind of just like, oh, that
Yeah,
was weird, and then move on.
move
And
on.
thankfully, my memory of the rest of those shows was pretty good. So yeah,
Good,
go ahead and listen to it, folks. You can go back a few episodes and hear me falling off the stage.
good. And this might be related to your tour, it might not be. What was your biggest achievement of 2023 that you didn't think would be a big achievement?
Huh. It's an interesting caveat on the end of that, isn't there? That I didn't think would be a big achievement. I suppose I suppose it's probably going to have to be the award that I got in the Comedy Guild, because I wasn't. It's not like I didn't appreciate that it was a big deal, but then when I saw how people reacted to it, like from my friends and family that have kind of been aware, like vaguely aware that I've been doing stand up, but not really. Them being really stoked for me, like my cousin who was my boss over in Japan posted a really
Right?
nice status about it because like he had literally been in the audience at my first show. So I would say it's probably that. Like, obviously the tour was massive, but I kind of knew I kind of knew that was a big
Yeah,
deal when I got into
yeah.
it. Um, so yeah, I would say probably winning that award. because I sometimes forget, like, even though we kind of laugh at comedy awards and think, like, what do you really need awards doing stand up for? Like, to normal people who aren't in the world, they look at
Yeah,
that and they're like, man, that's great, you're killing it. So I would have to say
yeah,
that's probably
nice.
my answer for that one.
Good answer. And staying on topic of big achievements, what's your girth, big boy? That's another question. No, I well, that's not me.
I thought that was you slipping in your slipping in your
That's
question
in
there.
the document.
That's in the document. That's fair. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who asked that one. So I won't use his name, but J Man, if you're out there, I appreciate you. Um, what's my girth?
Oh, my pant size was 42 inches, but it's gone down to 34
Yeah, I
recently.
was
So
gonna
I
say you've been crushing it with the weight loss. I remember
yeah,
I was I was sounds like I was cutting your head out of a photo to use for a quiz graphic. And just looking at your face, I was like, geez, Henry really has trimmed down quite a lot there. So
yep.
um yeah, I don't
So my,
I
my girth is 34 inches.
I've got
I
one of
assume
those.
that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I've got one of those leather belts that stretches, so my girth can kind of be whatever, like depending on how big of a lunch I've had. um, it kind of changes. Yeah, let's move on from that one.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I see it all the time on Facebook because he posts all the time on Facebook, but I've never known how to pronounce it. Coombe your friends? Combe your friends?
Oh, Coombe, Matt Coombe, yes.
Okay. Coombe
So,
or friends? Who's better?
oh, Coombe or Friends, who's better? That was
Yeah.
interesting. So those listeners of the show will probably remember Matt Coombe. He was his episode got quite a lot of downloads, which really surprised me because that was just a we went into that with zero plan. He was really sick, and it was just a sort of incoherent. We kind of just rambled on about like producing shows and comedy and life up in Auckland, and that ended up being one of my more downloaded episodes. So apparently, Coombe is a draw. Um, actually, that's how I can find out without actually having to potentially ruin one of two friendships. um, so let's see, the Coombe and
Well,
friends. Sorry, well, so yeah, to those listening, Coombe and Friends. Coombe is Matt Coombe, and then and Friends refers to Craig Westenberg because they did a show together called Coombe and Friends, and it was literally just two comedians. We sometimes joke that so if we were going to do a show with the three of us, it would be Coombe and Friends and Associate, and I would be the and Associate. um, so let's see. We'll use the podcast numbers. So Matt Coombe got 40 downloads, and Craig, the and Friends, got 35. So I think, unfortunately, Coombe beats out and Friends there.
how many did Hickman get?
Oh, you're crushing it, man. You've got like
Fuck yeah. Let's
uh
go.
part one, 58, part
Boom.
two, 36,
All right.
part three, 37. So they definitely drop off. Um,
So someone didn't come back for part two,
yeah, a
but
lot of
went, oh
people
fuck yes, I want to hear part seven.
a lot of people yeah, a lot of people the traitorous dogs didn't come back and finish the part two and three, so that's okay though.
All
Let's
right.
move on.
Here's one that I assume this isn't either your eyes expertise. I don't know why they're asking, but what was your most awkward first date?
Oh, I did see that one come through. And believe it or not, Henry, I've not exactly been on a lot of first dates.
No, me neither.
And yes, I did. I remember seeing that one come through, and I tried to think of a compassionate way to answer this because I feel like, as someone who's not been particularly blessed in terms of getting a lot of dates, I wouldn't necessarily like. I know what it's like on the other side of the fence, and I'm sure I've been the awkward party on the first date more than vice versa before. Um, and I was thinking, like, really, first dates are a little bit awkward in general because you're meeting someone for the first time, especially
Yeah.
nowadays with the apps and stuff like that. You generally kind of know someone's name and then what they look like, and then you've had like a bit of a chat just to make sure you're not gonna, you're not crazy. Respectively, you're not crazy people. Um,
Well, this question reminded me that a fan, in air quotes, at a comedy show I did last night extremely drunkenly requested my phone number, but then one of my Instagram instead. And she still has not accepted my request to follow her on Instagram, so I think that one's dead in the water.
wait,
I
so
think.
someone requested your phone number and then you added them on Insta instead, or did you also give them
Yeah,
the phone number?
no, just the Insta.
Interesting. Is that
Yeah.
you want your phone number to be a little? You want to play your cards a little closer to your chest there?
No, no, I was more than willing to give my phone number. She just was so drunk that she forgot her phone number and couldn't figure out how to unlock her phone.
Oh, so the
And
the
then
interaction happened there. Like
yeah,
you
at the
added.
comedy
Oh, okay.
club.
I thought it was like maybe she's like, "Give me your phone number," and you're like, "I'll find you on Instagram later." Like, because I can see how that would be like a thing. But to be honest, if this was New Year's Eve, she's probably only
Yeah.
woken up 15 minutes ago. You know,
Okay.
people are sleeping off pretty serious hangovers today. Um,
Keep hope alive.
yeah, and I mean, like, it's entirely possible that she might initially be like, "Who's Henry Hickman survivor on Instagram?" Um, so you know, you never know, man. Hold out hope. You might be having your very own awkward first date before long. But to answer the question, I haven't really had any that like I've never had like a painful first date or anything like that. I've had ones that I could tell, you know, chess masters, sometimes they know when the opening phase is
Fuck yeah,
done.
I know chess masters.
You know how they can tell, but like by the time the opening moves are done, they kind of already know who's going to win. Um, I've definitely had a lot of dates where I went, this is like not going to turn into a second date, and like not because I'm fucking, you know, I'm not you know, George
I
Clooney or
know what you
anything like
mean.
that, but you can just tell when it's not really meshing. And that's always the tough thing is when you have to tell someone essentially like there's nothing wrong with you, but it's just not like the magic's just not there.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I can't relate because you have to get on a first date for that to happen.
you're like plankton. I never thought I'd get this far.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's the thing, man. People, you're like, yeah, I haven't had any train wrecks. I'm sure I've been on ones that I thought went great and then actually like weren't because I've definitely been on the other shoe where like you hit them up and hey, it was great, you know, and then you just don't hear back. So um
It's just like he
yeah.
spent the entire time plugging his podcast. Yep.
Tried to get me to come to a comedy show and then it turned out he was on the show and
Yeah.
just left me
I
sitting in
I
the
paid for
audience.
both of our tickets.
Yeah, exactly. To my own comedy show.
Yeah.
Oh, that's delightful. Yeah, no, so I don't have any juicy ones there. Like, you know, I'm just flattered that they assumed I would be somebody who had a lot of first dates.
Right. And I assume I know who this was asked by. The question is Koeman Friends collab?
Well, there you go. That's I kind of already answered that question with the Common Friends and Associate. So maybe yeah, maybe in 2024 we could do a Coombe Friends. They're currently doing a tour called Coombe Friends Go Big or Make It Big. So definitely go and check those lads out on. They're doing like most of the North Island. So if you're up there and having a listen, get yourself along as they're two very talented young fellas.
Not to out myself as having not seen Rocky Five, as you said, but
Yeah.
having seen some really terrible movies. The name Koeman Friends Go Big gives me the same energy as a movie I saw on Netflix called Jerry and Mards Go Large. It's one of the. You ever
That's
see a
great.
movie and go, "Yeah, my dad would love this," and no one else?
Usually I see movies with like a dog on the thumbnail and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, that's the dog's going to talk in the movie, or it's going to be one of those family movies where the dog and the dad are like at odds with each other.
yeah.
Let's move
Anyway,
along.
even more earnestly, would you still love me if I was a worm?
Is that the one that you submitted?
No, no, my one's gone. Actually, you've
Oh,
missed
crap.
it.
Oh, so I've got to decipher which one it was. Um, would I still, well, you know, where I th- that's such an odd question. That has sort of worked its way into the zeitgeist, isn't it? Like,
There is a
I,
correct answer.
eh?
There's a correct answer. I've fallen into this trap. I know the answer.
Really?
You
What
just
is
say
the,
yes.
you just say yes.
What if someone asks you if you'd still love them if they were a worm? They're looking for like some sort of validation that
Yeah.
you like them for
I,
reasons that you can't put into words or whatever.
oh, that is, yeah, I've heard
Don't
go ahead.
don't get into the logistics of loving a worm, okay? Because I did. Not the answer.
So you were like, you were figuring out like where you're going to leave the apple for her to live in, and
Yeah, I was like, well, if you were a worm, would I even want to love someone who's biologically incapable of feeling love for me? Like
Yeah,
your brain would be on something they will, and then they dump me. So
man, it's tough out there, eh?
yeah, that was a
So
really weird first date.
you you were just at like you were at like a book cafe as well. She was poking out of the pages. Oh, no, hang on, that would imply she's already a worm. Damn it. Never
Fuck.
mind. We'll get that in post. I'm going to edit that out
Right.
to make me sound a little smarter. But no, yeah, that's an interesting question. That's I didn't quite get why that question is such a common one, but the when you put it that way, that does make sense to me because I suspect um, there's that whole idea of like would you still have people in your life if they weren't providing any value to you is kind of what people are wanting to know with
Yeah.
that query. Well, then I'll just respond with yes to that question and we can move on.
Good answer. Good answer. I hate people who preface their questions and then I need to read out the preface and it sounds like I actually care when I don't. But I've always wanted to ask, where do you get your ideas from?
Interesting. Um, that is a interesting question to ask a comedian because um I'll put it this way so that people can understand maybe is like the only difference really between a stand-up comedian and a not stand-up comedian is we all have funny thoughts throughout the day, but a stand-up comedian actually takes those funny thoughts and then just like writes them down and brings them to an open mic and says them to people that with no context. And like if they get a laugh, then like that's a bit.
Yep.
So it's one of
Let you in
those.
on a secret. They don't
Hey,
need to be funny thoughts sometimes.
what's that? You don't have
I'll let
funny
you in on a
thoughts?
secret. They don't have to be funny.
No, yeah, that's never stopped me from from
Yeah.
trying. Um, yeah, I think the misconception with non-comics um, is that you have to like actively write down an idea, whereas for the most part, I would say most comedians' jokes are just like something they thought of during the day or something that happened to them, and they thought I can probably tell this to strangers with no context and it will still be funny because that's the reason stand up doesn't work when someone's like, "Oh, you're a comedian. Let's hear a joke then." And you're like,
Yep.
"It ain't gonna work, man. Like, you're gonna feel bad, and I'm gonna feel nothing because bombing to strangers means nothing to me." But like, it's don't ask comedians to do that. Um, you
Someone
know,
did that to me in a job interview once because I had comedian on my CV and
ah,
they asked me to tell them a joke and I just bust out three dad jokes in a row
yeah. Did you
and
get
then
that
I get
job?
hired. Yeah, I did.
Well, that's the secret then, I guess. That's it. So like one-liners are slightly different. I can definitely give a better answer for like to answer the question genuinely. It's just either I heard someone use a turn of a phrase in daily life, and I thought, yeah, I can turn that into a one-liner. For example, the joke I do, I've posted this on all my socials, but the joke is ran into an old high school friend. Uh, I asked him where he works these days, and he said, my dad's firm. And I said, your mum's quite attractive too. Normally on stage, I use a slightly more aggressive word than attractive, but you get the idea. And that genuinely came from just think like I heard someone say, my dad's firm. And my thought was, I bet he is. He does Pilates, like whatever the
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
the Gary Delaney said this. He said the only reason he has a career is because English is such a bendy, malleable language with a lot
Yep.
of with being able to be broken and rearranged and meddled with and everything like that. So for wordplay stuff, it's pretty much always just I've heard someone you throw like an idiom or something out, and then I thought, I wonder how I can mislead people into thinking of the other meaning for that.
Yeah.
And then
You just reminded me of a joke that I wrote recently, which is yet to get a laugh, by the way, but you might be able to tell me how to make it better.
those are my favorite kinds of
It's
jokes.
well, because I thought about crossing the road when you cross the road, and then I thought about the Romans crucifying Jesus Christ, um, or crossing Jesus, if you will.
Right, right.
And I just trying to get those two things to go together. Something about Romans crossing the road, or
I reckon you need to go path of less resistance there. And you say, like, I crossed the road the other day, won't make that mistake twice. Because people say, like, you'll rue the day you
yeah,
crossed me or something like that. I
yeah,
reckon that would be your path there, is rather than because the verb is crucify, not cross somebody, right?
Ah, yeah. But they
That's
put
the
it. I've not read the Bible. I'm going to be honest.
I would say that's where it's falling down is it's not quite because the reason so many one-liners work is because they use a familiar phrase like someone will say like half of the course, but then the joke might they might take that apart and it might say part of the course or something like that. And because it's so similar, so familiar to people, that's why it gets a laugh. Like I think I have a joke. It's not really a funny joke, but I say, "You ever hear about the criminal who hid out in an airport for a year to avoid detection? He was hiding in a plain sight." And like, the joke there is
Fuck.
planes, Plane
Yeah.
Site. Yeah. And the reason that works is because plain sight is a really common phrase. So like I would say getting that to work is rather than just saying like across the road the other day, you could be like, um I'm just trying to think if there's an overlap between a really common road name and then a name that could also be a person's name. Like I was
Yeah.
in town the other day. I crossed Alberts. Uh, Fuck it, he was annoyed. Well, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. No, that's quite good.
that would be the ambiguity there. Is you find like what's a real common road in Christchurch? John's Road, Manchester. There'll be something out there that could also be like like I have that joke about watching the Oscars every year, and then it turns out that I'm referring to a family of people known as the Oscars, and so like that's what you're trying to do. So I hope listener that answered your question. Where I get my ideas from is for one-liners especially. It's something that I've heard, and I think I can break that and I can meddle with that, and I can trick people into thinking of one meaning and then pull the rug out from under them. And then stories and stuff, genuinely, they're just thought experiments. Like I have a joke about lying to a cashier to cover up buying chocolates late at night. I'll sometimes tell cashiers that my girlfriend is on that time of the month and she sent me down to get all this chockies. And then so the thought experiment there was, well, what if that went too far? And rather than being able to rely on the fact that the person behind the counter is going to be different each time, it's the same guy. And so I have to keep the lie going. And then years pass, and I've got this fake family and this son who's growing up. And then, you know,
Yeah.
like, what is it? Extrapolate that to infinity, right? Um, so yeah,
Quite
that's
fun.
another thing for me is I'll tell you one that I've been working on is like genuinely I had to help someone get rid of a sort of pain in the neck flatmate recently, and the weeks prior, I was asking him about the gym, and it was that whole like, how much do you bench, how much do you squat, kind of thing. But really, I wanted to know how strong he was to to know if I could take him or not. And so,
Yeah.
like, that's a thought experiment there that I'm going to take. I might kind of extrapolate that out and see if I can turn that into a story or a bit or something like that. So, hope that
Yeah.
answers the question, listener. Let's move on to the next one.
All right. Roasts.
I
Is
love
the
them.
format just because? Yeah.
My favorite type
I've
of
misled
Sunday.
you. You've been misled.
My favorite type of Sunday based cuisine.
Good.
Next question.
Yeah. Roast. Is the format just because comedians want to be really mean to each other because they are actually repressing self-hatred?
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So roasts, I genuinely think they only work if you're really good friends with the people that you're roasting because like if you ever watch the Comedy Central roasts, a lot of the comedians will know each other. So actually no, I'm going to revise my statement. They only work if the person is adequately famous enough and they have a bunch of things that the audience knows about them, like celebrities that have scandals and stuff like that. And also um, the comedians know each other well enough that you know they're actually not like they don't hate each other. Because like the tough thing about doing an open mic level roast is like realistically, no one in the lineup is famous. The crowd doesn't know anything about them except for their appearance and like what they look like, and you know maybe how they talk and stuff like that. But as we go further into the future, appearance-based humor is not really landing as well as it once did in the kind of 90s.
No.
So it's kind of like, okay, so you could do jokes about their personal life, but the audience doesn't know anything about them. You can go after I don't know. There's certain things that people find like I always get fat jokes made about me. Those those are apparently still acceptable. because this would be a whole nother episode of like what's acceptable to make fun of, and yeah, we'll gloss over
There's
all
a
that.
reason self-deprecating humor is so popular right now, and I think
Yeah,
that's part of it.
and I'm not smart enough to articulate this well without getting myself in trouble.
Yep.
So yeah, roasts are interesting. I think for the most part they like each other a lot because that's the other thing as well. Is like if you like someone and you know someone, then you know a lot about them. Whereas like if me and some other comic who I barely know having to roast each other, it's like, hey, what are we going to talk about? And then also like we don't know if they're actually taking shots at us that they really mean or not. So
Yeah.
it's that would be kind of my answer to that is I'm sure I'm sure there have been no shortage of like open mic random roasts, but I think for them to be really good, the people roasting each other have to like basically love each other, be really, really close,
Yeah.
or really, really famous and have a really good sense of humor about it all.
I'm also of the opinion that roasts died after the Norm Macdonald Bob Saget roast, I think it was.
That was so good.
That was there's no need to do roasts anymore. They're
Yeah,
done.
they haven't really been as good for a long time. I think the last one that I actually really enjoyed was the Justin Bieber one, and that was because all the people on the dais were clearly really, really good friends. Like they didn't know him, but like the jokes about each other were hilarious.
Right. Moving on from roasts.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not moving on from roasts.
Mm.
If you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life, why would it be Denny's?
Why would it be tennis? That's I'm almost certain I know who submitted that one. Um, why would it be Denny's? Because Denny's is 24 hours in a lot of places. It is usually in like central areas. They do they do a big variety of food, some of which I think they probably shouldn't be doing. Like I knew a guy that ordered a satay roll from Denny's once, and it's like I don't know if that's the kind of food you should be ordering from Denny's. Um, they
I
have
went to
some.
Denny's in California once, and it was a trip.
How, was it like all right, or was it a bit rough?
It was quite rough, but I was in a rough area.
Well, I think with New Zealand Denny's, um, I had this realization because I've gone back and forth on my opinion on Denny's many times. Like I had my first experience as an adult with it, where I used to get this thing called the Millennium Burger, which was amazing. But then I kept getting it. They would serve it, and it would still be pink in the middle, and the quality of the meat felt like it was really, really like dropping at one point, and so I kind of went off it. Um, but then just recently, I went to the one in Auckland and I ordered like a breakfast, like hash browns, eggs, bacon, all that kind of thing. And I kind of remembered like, well, Denny's is like a diner. So diners do breakfast food really well.
Yep.
So that's, in my opinion, that's kind of what you should be ordering from Denny's. Like, don't go for the satay roll. Don't go for the like, don't go for the curry and
Yeah.
naan. Um,
That, that was part of the reason my Denny's experience wasn't good is because I don't like eggs. And
well, yeah,
so I
exactly.
had
Yeah.
to I had to construct a meal that didn't have eggs, and so I ordered
Mm,
bacon, sausage, turkey sausage, and hash browns.
yeah.
With it turns out what that consisted of was two pieces of bacon, one turkey sausage, one breakfast sausage, and it was the most pitiful meal you could get in America.
That's, I believe, what the
Like,
kids call boy dinner.
yeah, it was a boy dinner back in 2017.
No kidding. All right, let's move on.
Who are your favorite comedians to watch right now? I'll just
Oh,
sit back for this one.
yeah, yeah. Let's break it into local versus like world stage.
Yeah.
Um, local. Who do I like? Obviously, Henry Hickman is a talented ingenue, a wonderkind, if you will. Um, the next big thing in survivor based comedy. Um, when I think for like we'll go New Zealand, obviously David Correos. I genuinely think he's one of the best comics in the country right now. I think he won Best Male Comedian in the Guild Awards, which is like very well earned. Yeah, he's just incredible. I'm gonna get in trouble here because I don't watch a heap of New Zealand comedy, which is basically like sacrilege here. Um, oh gosh, I'll just skip to the American one because like I know a
Mr.
lot of
Worldwide.
I know a lot of the New Zealand comics, and if I miss people out, I'm gonna feel terrible about it. So let's just go. My favorite in New Zealand, David Correos, and overseas, the ones that I like. Todd Barry, I love Todd Barry. He's like just his energy, I love. Check out Domestic Short Hair on YouTube. It's a free special. Gary Delaney is probably my biggest inspiration because of his work ethic, and he's just the way he talks about writing jokes is the kind of stuff we were talking about before. Big fan of Gary Delaney. And then actually Gary's wife, Sarah Millican, hilarious.
Ah, I do know her.
She does like these shows that are like nearly 2 hours long, and she doesn't move from one spot. And it's just like she's just crushing for 2 hours. She's so good. Like just those two, like if I could have dinner with, you know what I mean? Like if I could have dinner with like any kind of celebrity couple, I'd love to spend like an evening with Sarah and Gary. I think that would just be like insane. It's like those two are my favorites. I I quite like Jezelnik because he's done something unique with the one-liner thing. He's basically designated himself as the devil, and he's seen that through right till the end. Like, he he chose his path and wandered down. He's also a very, very good joke writer. Who else do I like to listen to? I, of course, am a big fan of Bert Kreischer. I feel like people try to dunk on him for not being a joke guy, but he's got a lot more jokes than people think he does. I just also think it's amazing the stuff he does with his tour, like the Fully Loaded tour. He brings like smaller comics with him on the road to like give them like a bigger audience
Yeah.
that they probably wouldn't be able to get themselves. I think Sam Morril is a really good joke writer as well, and then sort of connected to that, Taylor Tomlinson for like many reasons. I think she's just like
Oh yes, I
she's
love
a
her.
ingenue, like a wonderkind, whatever you call it. Like she's like
Yeah.
25 or something, and just
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so funny. Her and Sam Morril used to date, I think. I don't know if they still do. Who else? Oh, Stavi. I like Stavros. I get a little bit of fatigue with Stavros because like a lot of his stuff is like, you know, something something, get my dick sucked, something something, dick pills, something
Yeah,
something
my
diner.
man.
Like it's a little bit, but I love his energy. I love Stavi. Um, let's just move on because those are some of
Right.
my favorites. Those are some of the ones I'm enjoying right now, anyways.
And what is your boomerist opinion?
Oh, boomerist opinion. I really don't get TikTok. A lot of the content to me is too like um it's too it's too quick. I need I, I need them to slow down because like you'll open up a TikTok and it'll be this gigantic wall of text over someone's face with music playing, and then it will cut away to something and I'm like, I didn't have time to read any of that, and so you've got to like wait for it to loop, then you've got to jam your thumb onto the screen and stop it so that you can read the whole thing. And the egregious use of the phrase POV, they'll be like
Oh
POV,
God, they
and then
don't
it's
use.
it's
Yeah,
so clearly not that person's point of view, and that
yeah.
that bothers me.
It's literally you looking at the person who they're claiming it's the point of
Yes,
view of.
exactly. That's kind of the kind of pedantry that I go through life with. I think it's a part of life that old people like myself are look at young slang and be like, oh, what the hell are they saying? But the the way you have to write like unalive instead of dead, or they'll write sex as like segs, and that bothers me. I know it shouldn't. I should say as well. None of this shit really bothers me, but like this is the boomery opinions that I have, where I
Yeah,
look at the platform and I go, "Oh, I don't understand much of this." So I'm not
I
trying to.
quite enjoy that.
I'm not trying to shit on young people. Like I understand culture evolves and stuff, but
Yeah.
these are the things that me as a approaching middle-aged man doesn't quite get. Let's move on.
Uh, all right. Okay. What has been your favorite episode of the podcast so far? Once again, I'll lean back in my chair and prepare
I'm
for the
gonna
accolades.
I'm gonna have to make my own chart of Henry things. Like the Beatles used to have their own they used to have their own charts for like Beatles music. My favorite episode of the podcast, but I think I'm going to try and rip through these quite quickly. So I think episode one of the Phantom Files, because that was one that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And then probably my I'm just trying to quickly look at my little charts just to see which ones kind of stand out. I was really happy with the jokes and clips from the new material tour because it was satisfying that I managed to record all the shows and then edit them together. And then I think the one I didn't realize I was going to enjoy so much was talking about potato chips with Danny Sewell because I thought he was joking when he said that New Zealand had the best potato chips in the world. And it ended up being a really, really interesting conversation. And so that kind of thing encapsulates like what podcasting is about to me. It's like
Yeah.
this thing where you go into it going, huh? And then you leave going, yeah. Any other
All
questions?
right. Yeah. What are your favorite podcasts right now?
Oh yeah, easy. I can go to my page and rip through
Yeah.
these real
So
quick.
it's Ruddle Me This, and that's it.
So I'm listening to The Rest is History. That's a history podcast. The two guys in it. For me, I listen to podcasts when I sleep and when I drive, so the hosts need to have soothing voices. So I've got The Rest is History. Starvy's World, that again, that can be hard because he's got a real piercing laugh. I listen to Intentionally Blank, that's Brandon Sanderson's podcast. I've got all the ones on there like Two Bears, One Cave, Burtcast, this past weekend, but I don't listen to those like religiously. I kind of listen if I have an episode that jumps out at me. Listen to Good One, which is a Vulture podcast about jokes. If you're a comedian, definitely recommend listening to that. I've got Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, but that doesn't upload, doesn't update that often. I've got Shadows at the Door, which is a ghost stories podcast. Fantastic one. Definitely check that out. We've got Blocks by Neil Brennan. That's another one with a game, like I was talking about in the at the start of the episode. The game there is they bring all of their blocks to the podcast, which is the things that make them feel alone in the world. We've
Yeah.
got Kumail Nanjiani's X Files files. I don't watch the X Files. I just like listening to Kumail talk about it. um, Jokes with Mark Simmons. I wonder my dream is one day to be on that podcast because he's a gag merchant like myself. Recently got back into Inside of You with Michael
Sorry.
Rosenbaum.
What?
Yeah, it
All right.
sounds
Good.
dodgy, doesn't
Good.
it? Um, but it's just a really good interview show. Comfort Blanket is by a couple of well, it's by Joel Morris, who used to do a podcast called Rule of Three, which was a great comedy podcast. And then again, I've just recently got back into the James Altucher show, which is I had the biggest blast from the past. Listening to that on the way into radio the other day, because I started listening to it when I got my last job working at the newspaper, and it would be like the Monday morning thing that I'd listen to on the way in.
Yeah.
And I don't do well in the mornings. I'm like a bit of a zombie in the mornings, and so I was having to get up earlier than I normally would have to work there. And so just listening to the jingle, they've got like this rap beat that plays at the start, and that was sending me way back to like 4 or 5 years ago when I was starting this job, and just kind of like the hazy like drive and trying to find a park on whatever that street the Burger King's on Lincoln Road.
Morehouse Avenue, isn't it? Or a different one?
Uh, no, it might be it's something else, but um, so we've only got a couple of minutes left here. Let's. Is
I've
there any
got
other
four
questions
more
on the list?
questions.
Four
I've
more.
got four. Two of them can be yes, no.
Okay, yep.
Were you the class clown in high school?
No, absolutely not. I was
No.
quiet.
Cool.
I was snarky, but I was not funny. I'm not. I'm still not funny now.
Are you happy?
Holy shit, that's a deep
Yes,
question.
no.
I'd say I am happy, but I'm not satisfied. I have a lot of things I want to get done in the next year.
Cool. What that mouth do? Yes or no?
What that mouth do?
Yeah.
um,
Yes, no.
leave. Yes, it leaves an absolute wake of destruction at the buffet, and it expels terrible comedy jokes and helps me create this award-nominated podcast.
And final question.
Yes.
What is the weirdest nickname you have, and how did
Oh,
you get it? Yes,
big
no.
big queasy, because my friend Jake, who does all my photography and stuff, he was coming up with rapper names. For a while, he used to call me Young Paper, but then he upgraded it to Big Queasy. So then that's adjusted to calling. We do all sorts of puns like Julius Queezer, Queesburger with fries. Um, I'm blanking on some. Usually it's just the Queeze. That's like
Good.
the nickname. It was usually for the guys at kickboxing used to call me the Queeze. So we've got about a minute left. Henry,
Well, we're
get
done. It's over.
get get your plugs in quickly. How can the people find out
Uh,
more about you?
Henry Hickman Survivor on YouTube, Henry Hickman Comedy Instagram, Henry Hickman Comedian on Facebook. I really got to put this all into one thing one day.
I will chuck those all under the description. This episode went a lot longer, as is typical of Henry and I's collaborations, but what can I say? He's just a delightful young man to chat to. Thank you for joining me, Henry, and I look forward to our next podcast. Take care, man.
Thank you for having me. You too.